It's very striking that the only two books in the entire Christian Bible that insist that Jesus was supernaturally conceived and that Joseph wasn't his father, then produce a genealogy of the very man who's not Jesus' father.
Hi, thank you so much for taking my call. So first of all, I just want to say, Rabbi, it's so amazing to talk to you. I have the biggest smile on my face just stating this question. So my question basically is, I know the New Testament specifically talks about the lineage of the Messiah and Jesus, and there's many discrepancies, to say the least, with that. So I'm curious if the lineage of the Messiah, the true Messiah, is still being traced and tracked, and what that looks like.
All right. Very cool. Good question. Go and hang them down to you if you answer. Thank you.
Thank you.
You bet.
As it turns out, there are my great-grandmother, but it's on a matrilineal side, was a descent of David and Solomon. I know many people who are from the house of David. It's quite a large family. I don't know the numbers. I couldn't even begin to suggest how many hundreds of thousands of people today, just because of their lineage, meaning their descent of David and Solomon, are technically eligible to be the Messiah. But I want to, without your permission, I want to just take your question a way that you didn't intend it, because this comes up way too often. It's not like when the true Mashiach comes, may it be very soon, that he's going to have some sort of book with him or card with him or genealogical record written, sealed, stating that he in fact is eligible to be the Messiah because he's from David and Solomon, which Mashiach must be. He must be the descendant of David and Shlomo. I mean, I would be remiss if I ignored the point that the genealogy in Matthew, as an example, is tracing the putative genealogy of Joseph, the husband of Mary, not Jesus, if he was born of a virgin. I mean, that's how they get themselves in trouble. The genealogy in both Matthew and Luke, it's very striking that the only two books in the entire Christian Bible that insist that Jesus was supernaturally conceived and that Joseph wasn't his father, then produce a genealogy of the very man who's not Jesus' father, Matthew in chapter 1 and Luke in chapter 3. So it's like God did that. That's so outrageous. I mean, you could have easily had a genealogy in the book of Mark. The author of Mark didn't know anything about Jesus being conceived supernaturally. The genealogy in Mark would have made more sense, but in fact, in the second gospel, we're introduced to Jesus as an adult, at his baptism, essentially. So there are a series of events that will unfold leading up to the coming of the Messiah. I believe that we are living in that time right now. I believe that. And because there are very clear prophecies of events that will occur as leading up to this final exodus where the world will be redeemed. You know, the book of Zechariah is not an easy book in Tanakh. It's not. It begins with 8 visions. Some of them are not easy to understand. They're not terribly difficult, but they're not that simple. But of all the 14 chapters in the book of Zechariah, the one chapter that's really very easy to understand, that anyone could read it, and if you don't read it, you're going to have to answer God as to why you ignored that chapter. I mean, I understand why you might not understand the opening few chapters of Zechariah, but Zechariah 12? Zechariah 12, just read it from the beginning to the end. And you'll see very quickly the time we're living in, the tribulation we have endured recently, and the coming of the true Mashiach may be quickly in our time. So when the Mashiach comes, and the knowledge of God will fill the world as the water covers the sea, Habakkuk chapter 2, verse 14, Isaiah chapter 11, verse 9, he will rebuke the nations, and they'll listen to him. They'll stream up to Yerushalayim, Ki mitzion tetzei Torah devar Hashem Yerushalayim, for out of Zion will go forth the law and the word of Hashem from Jerusalem. The result of the rebuke, the nations will put down their implements of war. The United States just signed an $8 billion deal with Israel to sell weapons. If there's an $8 billion weapons deal between Washington and Jerusalem, that means the Messiah has not yet come. It's really that simple. There's nothing complicated about this. So when there's peace on earth, when the wolf lies with the lamb, Isaiah 11 again, when there's a Beis Hamikdash built on Mount Moriah, see the last three passages of Ezekiel chapter 37, meaning verse 26, 27, and 28. Then the Mashiach will come. That means the Mashiach is here. No one's going to say, wait, I know there's worldwide peace, and I know all the nations will listen to you. They took all these implements of war that are now used by Houthis in Yemen, by Ukrainians and Russians, and there's so many wars in Nigeria. There's so much. All that comes to an end. No one's asking for an ID card. It just, Mashiach is a fulfillment of a promise that God made to King David in 2 Samuel chapter 7. This Davidic covenant, incidentally, appears many times. That's one example. The promise is that the Davidic dynasty will be preserved in the house of David through Solomon. That's the promise. Not that the Mashiach has to show an ID card in the Messianic age. The one key feature of the Messianic age that's very striking and unmistakable is that everyone will know, from the least of them to the greatest of them, will know the truth. And no one is going to have to teach his neighbor about God, for they shall all know me. Where did I get that from? Jeremiah 31. If only Christians would pay attention to that passage. They pay attention to the passage before it, not that verse. So in the Messianic age, there will be a universal knowledge of God, and war will come to an end, and all the nations will speak B'safa Brura, in a pure speech. Those words were expressed by a man who lived right where I am now, in Jerusalem. His name, Tzefania. You probably know him as Zephaniah. And please God, we will see that event very quickly in our time. Thank you for your question. If you enjoyed this program, please like and subscribe.
אדון עולם אשר מלך בטרם כל יציר נברא עת נעשה בחפצו כל